In this video, I'm going to be talking about our experience with webinars over the last few years, because in our business, we still use them today and they still do work, but only in very certain scenarios. The reason why I'm talking about this today is because I actually spent the entire morning just redesigning our webinar strategy to fit in better with what we're actually creating today, and hopefully allowing my team and allowing the hosts for each webinar to do a lot more of the work. That is basically what my mission has been for this entire last 2 months, is to automate as much of my pet care business as I can so that it kind of runs itself. And, we already make $500,000 a year. I already spend less than one day per week on it currently, but I think it can be way less. And I'm just building all the systems behind that. And it's largely a marketing first business, meaning the marketing has to be really good in order for the business to sustain. So I just wanted to share a couple of key points with you about webinars this year in 2024. The place where we're using them is, and this is very important, is at the bottom of the funnel. So most of the webinar courses and stuff that got sold years ago that people made millions of dollars from, everyone talked about those particular webinars, and they were more of like top of funnel webinars where you could create cold audience ads. So market the webinar to absolutely anybody and get people into the webinar, and just through knowing your conversion rates plus the ads being so cheap, you could actually turn a profit pretty quickly. And then it was just about scaling that up. Whereas these days it's so much harder to do that. I'm sure there's probably people who are making it work, but it's hard work. It's really tough to do. Not many marketers out there would be able to do it. Whereas the safer option is using it at the bottom of the funnel. So I just want to show you a couple of the things that I think about here. So first one is the goals. So what is the goal of the webinar? And we have a few of them, which is number one is to build trust. So building trust with the audience is absolutely key. So that's why a lot of the older style webinars where they didn't really provide value, as more just like a persuasion or psychological sales script, probably aren't working as well anymore. In some industries like internet marketing, sure, persuasion type of stuff is always going to work in there because people are hungry for money. But when it comes to, different topics, like for us, pet care, for example, we need to build trust. And the best way to build trust is to solve a really tiny problem in a really great way. And also to be upfront about everything that's going to happen on the webinar. And that includes if you're going to make an offer. So we talk about at the start that we're going to make an offer that they can buy, but it's not going to take away from the actual content that they learn in the webinar itself. The second thing that we think about as well is the topic and the content, which I didn't write there. But the topic is so important for marketing, but the content inside of that is actually also really important. And what do I mean by that? The webinar should solve the very first problem that will lead into whatever the next step is. So for example, we're about to do a workshop on holistic, so healing kidney disease for dogs, which means the first step of this particular webinar needs to identify the subtle signs that your dog might be developing that kidney disease, because we want to make sure we're getting everybody who thinks their animal is on that path. So we have to solve that in a very, what are the top 3 signs? So that's the first thing that we're teaching them, is how do they identify that without going to the vet and so forth. So that's the first one. And the next one is to allow the students or the potential students to spend time with the hosts. So if you don't know this yet, Google's 7-11-4 rule. It is basically some data that they put out a few years ago now. I think it was maybe back in 2011 or something like that, where they showed that a buyer needs 7 hours of interaction across 11 touch points in 4 separate locations inside your business before they'll actually make a purchase. So for us, we've got our online virtual summits, which is where we generate most of our leads. So in that, people are watching those summits on YouTube, and then we've also got pre-recorded versions on there as well. And then we also have free downloads. So there's 3 touch points that we can get just from one promotion to get people engaged with our hosts. And then after the summit, that's why we then do a webinar, is to give them another touch point, which would make it 4 really big touch points for people to interact with the host, the person who's going to be doing this particular workshop that we're trying to sell. So that allows us to build that relationship with people. And also, if it's in different locations, then the brain just somehow makes it feel like that particular person is more familiar. And a great marketing strategy is to run retargeting ads on every single platform to make it look like that you're absolutely everywhere. Quick little side note. But we do that as well. And then of course we've got a bunch of webinars happening all the time. And then sometimes we'll do ads. And then the final thing, which I already did touch on briefly, but it's also to demonstrate expertise. You, especially if it's going to be a workshop, you want to make sure you have some type of long form training that people can get engaged in first for free before they actually begin to make a buying decision as to whether they want to join that workshop and engage in with you. The next thing that we think about, what types of webinars do we want to create? When we first started doing this, we didn't really have a lot of control over the presenters and how good they were and the quality and so forth. And so we decided to do an activation webinar, is what I would call it, and where the call to action is, at the end of the webinar, is to book a call. These are by far the easiest webinars to get converting, is to get them people to book in for a call. You've just got to create a really compelling offer that gets people engaged. And that offer varies, which I'm not going to go into. It could be a direct offer saying, hey, you sign up for this sales call, we're going to see if you're the right fit, which means you won't get as many people signed up. Or it could be a strategy call where we say, we're going to deliver a strategy, and then you've got to do the transition yourself on the phone and sell them something. So that we could talk about that for a long time. But that's one option, is to book calls. The second option, and that's what we started with, just by the way, but we didn't want to build out a sales team, a call team, and we didn't want to do it ourselves. So we're like, okay, let's make less money, less revenue, but it would be purely profit because we're just going to sell it from the website. So that's when we started doing sales webinars. And this one is much harder to do because you're then pitching an actual product, you're presenting a price, you're getting people to actually click onto a sales page and take that conversion there on the spot. So they both still work at the bottom of the funnel, but you need to maybe just start with the activation webinars first and then move into the sales ones later. And then the final thing that we're thinking about is making them much shorter than what they used to be. So webinars used to be anywhere from 40 to, I've seen some of them that were 90 minutes. Which were great back in the day, but I think things have changed quite a lot. And at least for our audience, we've found that 20 to 30 minute videos in length are actually better. The other things that I've not added here, which I'll just pop in here now, things like this. So we actually still do them pre-recorded. So the reason why is we tried to do a live webinar once and the presenter just totally messed it up. We had like 400 people sign up for the webinar, or 400 people attending live on the webinar. And we had 2 sales from that, which is the worst conversion rate I've ever seen for any webinar ever that I've done. So, and it was because the host fumbled around for like the first 10 minutes. They were not very engaging for the audience. And within 15 minutes had lost basically everybody. Few people stuck around to the end, just I think out of sympathy, or they were desperate to learn the information, but two people purchased. What we realized is it's actually way better to get the message right than it is to be live. So a lot of people talk about, oh, if you've got to do a webinar, you've got to make sure that you are live so you can interact with the audience. But if you're not a great presenter or you're still learning, and you know that you might fumble every now and then it's actually way better to do it pre-recorded because you can edit out all of those fumbles, all of those ums and ahs, and make sure that you're only getting the things in there that you actually need. And that then allows you to get it much closer to that 20 to 30 minutes as well. The other thing that we're thinking about now is more of like a hybrid, let's call it like a YouTube video combined with a webinar. So what do I mean by this? So basically we are starting the webinar with like a face to camera, something like this, where the host comes on, they introduce themselves and say, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the top 3 subtle signs that your dog is developing kidney disease. So something like that. And then so like that's on camera, you can see them, they're building a bit of relationship, they're getting a feel for the person. And then we'll transition into the webinar where it begins to build authority with that particular host. So to recap what I just meant by that, or to say it another way, we're doing face to camera video for like the first 30 seconds to 1 minute. We're doing a 20-minute, or let's call it a 15-minute webinar with slides, with content, with different content pieces with, you know, some funny bits, with introducing the offer, with presenting the offer at the end. And then we're doing like another 2 or 3 minutes at the end where the host comes back on camera and they talk about why they're so passionate about this workshop and why people should join them and all of those types of things. So we're calling it like a bit of a hybrid YouTube video combined with a webinar. So those are the big things that we're thinking about for webinars this year. I would say that our webinars last year were responsible for at least $50,000 in sales. I think, again, we've kind of scaled back a little bit this year. So I think we'll do at least $20,000 to $30,000 in sales from webinars this year, which may not sound like a lot, but for us, like I said, they're bottom of funnel. We're not really spending any money, and we're not spending money on them at all. It's just pure profit. Now, there's one final reason which I've not mentioned yet, which is why we continue to do webinars today. And that is because if you are always promoting an offer to your full email list, then people begin to disengage very quickly. And we tried to get away from doing webinars for a little while because we just didn't want to create them. We thought we could shortcut it. But what we realized is that it's so important to take your full email list and present them with free offers all the time, not paid offers. If you can present them with like a free webinar, and then some of those people show interest in that webinar, that's when you can start making a really hard pitch and a really hard offer to those particular people in that email sequence. And you can leave your full list alone so that you're not disengaging them and just asking them to buy every single time. So we try and have an ebook funnel or webinar funnel for every single workshop that we do so that we can move people off into the right direction before we start promoting the workshop really hard. So that's webinars in a nutshell for us, but I do have one final request. And this is more of just me collecting some data to see if you would be interested in a full online course on webinars. I've produced maybe a dozen webinars now for our pet care brand, but this is just one brand I've done it for. I actually used to work for one of Australia's leading entrepreneur training companies before I started this pet care brand. And I used to build a webinar every single month for them. And every single webinar did 6 figures in sales, at least. And I think our best month was like $250,000 in sales from just that webinar. So if you are interested in how to plan a webinar, how to write one, how to also market one, and then how to create a really great offer from a webinar, which would be both a sales pitch and also booking a call. If you are interested in that, like a full online course, let me know, because I will actually create one for free on YouTube. It'll probably go from anywhere between 2 to 3 hours. And I'm only going to create it if there's interest. So we would go through and we would go and build an entire webinar from start to finish. I will share the screen the whole way, and I'll show the exact process of how to actually do that. So if you're interested, let me know down below and give me a few bullet points on the specific things that you'd love to learn in that. So that's all from me. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.